For most of the time humans have existed on this planet, wolves represented something to be feared. If you had been alive 30,000 years ago and heard howling in the darkness beyond your fire, that sound meant one thing: danger. You were physically small, painfully slow, and surrounded on all sides by predators capable of tracking you by scent from enormous distances. Wolves moved in coordinated packs. Their jaws were built to crush bone. Their stamina was practically limitless. And their eyes could read the darkness in ways your own eyes never could. And yet, when you look at every animal the human species has ever encountered across the entire sweep of our history, the one that became our closest companion was not the horse, not the cow, not the chimpanzee. It was the wolf. Today there are more than 900 million dogs living on Earth. They sleep in our beds and guard our front doors. They detect explosives buried underground and herd livestock across open hillsides. They pull people out of avalanches and sit next to birthday cakes wearing small paper hats. But none of this was planned. No group of ancient humans gathered around a fire and decided to engineer a friendly animal that would fetch sticks. Dogs did not come from intention. They came from accident. And the strangest part of the whole story is that wolves may have begun the process themselves, long before any human understood what was unfolding beside their campfire. To follow how this happened, you have to put yourself in the world as it existed somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago. Humans at that time lived as hunter-gatherers. Small groups, perhaps 20 to 50 people, moved constantly across vast stretches of land in search of food. Life operated at the edge of what was survivable. The majority of hunts produced nothing. Winter was a serious and regular killer. A broken bone in the wrong place could end a person's life. And at the perimeter of every human camp, just beyond the reach of the firelight, wolves waited and watched. Here is the detail that changes everything. Humans are extraordinarily wasteful when they eat. Even in periods of near starvation, hunter-gatherer camps left behind bones, animal hides, scraps of meat, and the remains of partially consumed carcasses. To a wolf assessing the situation from the shadows, a human encampment was not a threat. It was a reliable and effortless source of food. Wolves began approaching, not all of them and not immediately. The ones that came closest were the bold ones. The aggressive ones lunged and were killed with spears. The deeply fearful ones kept their distance and went hungry. But scattered through those wolf populations were individuals who occupied a different position on the behavioral spectrum. Less reactive, less driven by aggression, more willing to tolerate the proximity of something unfamiliar. Modern genetic research suggests that some wolves were simply born with a reduced fear response around humans. Those individuals crept closer to the camps. Those individuals ate better. Eating better meant surviving longer. Surviving longer meant producing more offspring. And those offspring carried the same temperament forward. What was happening, without anyone directing it or even noticing it, was evolution filtering a wolf population by personality. The calmer wolves stayed closer. The friendlier wolves ate more. The aggressive ones either died or kept their distance and received none of the benefits. Generation by generation, the population of wolves around human camps was quietly shifting toward individuals who were more comfortable near people. And then something stranger happened. The behavioral changes began producing physical ones as well. This sounds implausible until you learn that scientists have watched the same process happen in a controlled setting within a single human lifetime. In 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev launched an experiment in Siberia using silver foxes. His method was simple almost to the point of seeming trivial. Every generation, he selected only the least aggressive individuals for breeding. He did not train them. He did not reward specific behaviors or teach them anything at all. He simply bred the calmest foxes together, over and over again, across successive generations. Within a few decades, the results were startling. The foxes had begun behaving like domestic dogs. They wagged their tails when humans approached. They sought out physical contact and whined when people left. They licked hands, but the behavioral shifts were only part of what changed. Their bodies began changing too. Their ears went floppy. Their snouts became shorter. Patches of white appeared in their fur. Their tails developed a curl. Something in the biology underlying aggression appeared to be connected to the biology underlying physical appearance, and reducing one seemed to alter the other almost automatically. Scientists studying domesticated animals across many different species have identified the same pattern consistently. When animals become less aggressive through selection, they tend to develop softer facial features, smaller jaws, less uniform coat patterns, and floppier ears as a kind of package deal. The earliest proto-dogs may have begun looking noticeably less threatening before any human made a conscious choice to breed them for anything at all. Picture standing at an Ice Age camp and observing a group of wolves nearby that were visibly smaller, visibly calmer, and visibly less alarming than the wolves you feared. Not domesticated animals by any stretch, but not fully wild in the way you understood wildness either. something in between, something that sat at the edge of the firelight and did not attack. And this was probably not happening in one location. The conditions that created it, human camps, leftover food, wolf populations in the surrounding landscape, existed across enormous stretches of the ancient world simultaneously. Humans and wolves were likely entering this gradual, unspoken negotiation in multiple places at the same time. For thousands of years, the shift continued without anyone understanding it. No human sitting beside a fire recognized that evolution was unfolding a few meters away from them. But humans almost certainly noticed the practical value very quickly. Wolves hear things before humans do, at greater distances, and with far more precision. They detect predators by scent long before any human sense could register a threat. They track prey across terrain where humans would lose the trail entirely. A wolf that had become comfortable enough to remain near a human camp was functioning, in purely practical terms, as a living early warning system. When bears moved toward the camp, the wolves responded before any human knew. When unfamiliar people approached, the wolves gave notice. When prey animals were within range, the wolves could help locate them. Once both species began providing the other with genuine survival advantages, the pace of the relationship accelerated dramatically. This is why dogs hold the distinction of being the first domesticated animal in human history. The relationship predates sheep, it predates goats, it predates the invention of farming by a considerable margin. And when humans eventually did develop agriculture, dogs adapted again in order to remain alongside us. As human diets shifted toward grain-based foods, dogs gradually evolved a significantly improved ability to digest starch, a capacity that wolves lack. The scale of what this implies is worth pausing on. Dogs were already woven into human life before writing existed, before cities existed, before metal tools existed, before the pyramids were a thought in anyone's mind. Over those thousands of generations, the bond between the two species moved beyond the purely functional. When a human looks directly into a dog's eyes, both the human and the dog release oxytocin, the same neurochemical that drives bonding between parents and their children. This does not happen when humans make eye contact with wolves. It is specific to dogs. It is the result of a long evolutionary process that shaped dogs not just to work alongside humans, but to connect with human emotional systems in a direct and powerful way. The expression on a dog's face when it looks at you is not random or coincidental. Evolution built it there because humans were more likely to care for, protect, and feed animals that appeared emotionally engaged with them. Some anthropologists have argued that dogs improved human hunting outcomes so substantially that groups with dogs consistently outsurvived and outcompeted groups without them. If that is accurate, dogs may have played a genuine role in allowing humans to spread and establish themselves across the planet. But domestication extracted a price from dogs as well. The wolf that once survived anything was gradually replaced by animals whose health was increasingly dependent on human choices. Pugs struggled to draw breath through their flattened airways. Dachshunds frequently develop severe spinal problems from the proportions bred into them. Bulldogs have, in many cases, lost the ability to give birth without surgical assistance. The wolf was remade, and not always gently. And yet the wolf never entirely disappeared. When a dog turns in tight circles before lying down, it may be reenacting an ancient behavior, wolves flattening ground cover before resting. When a dog howls at a distant sound, buries food in the garden, or twitches its legs during sleep, something from thousands of years ago is surfacing through the behavior of an animal that now lives on sofas and eats from ceramic bowls. Inside every chihuahua, inside every husky, the shadow of an Ice Age predator is still present. Perhaps that is part of what makes dogs feel so unlike any other animal humans have domesticated. Cats exist in proximity to people. Cows tolerate being managed by people. Horses accept working in partnership with people. But dogs made a different kind of choice. They slept beside humans while the darkness outside the firelight was full of things that would kill both of them. They crossed frozen ground with people during migrations that lasted generations. They stood guard over sleeping camps. They followed humans into storms, into wars, onto boats, into continents that no member of either species had ever seen. At some point in that shared journey, what existed between humans and dogs became something that the language of survival and utility cannot fully account for. In Germany, archaeologists uncovered a burial site dating back approximately 14,000 years. Inside, they found the remains of a man and a woman, and beside them, buried with the same care and deliberateness, was a dog. The dog's bones showed evidence of a serious illness it had suffered in its early life, an illness that would have required weeks or months of sustained care from the humans around it to survive. Those humans, living at the edges of what the Ice Age permitted, spent food they could not easily replace on an animal that could not repay them in any immediate or obvious way. That is not a calculation, that is not strategy, that is something else. For thousands of generations, humans and dogs shaped the conditions of each other's survival. It began because a few individual wolves, somewhere in the ancient world, were slightly less afraid of fire than the others. There was no design behind it, no decision was ever made. Just leftover food beside a dying fire, cautious animals moving closer through the dark, and evolution doing quietly what it always does, turning the smallest differences in behavior into something that changes the world completely. Tonight, somewhere near you, a dog is probably getting ready to fall asleep. It has no memory of any of this, but the reason it is there next to you is a story that started tens of thousands of years ago, and now you know how it goes.